Good afternoon YouTube, Ian here from Coolice Charge Case and Power Supplies. Hope you're all safe and well at this strange time. I don't know how much of my face you can see. I keep looking up every now and then to make sure that my phone's not falling on my head. I'm going to try a different method of holding the phone at the moment. As promised, basically this is a little bit more of an in-depth video to highlight the module build of the charging rack video that I just posted recently. Basically, obviously I've started production of all the parts and obviously then assembly for the second rack, because there's a planned obviously 3. So first one's been delivered. We've obviously 2 out of 3 chargers fitted, and then this is the second one that is currently in progress with me here. So basically, as you can see, this is the front plate of one of the charger modules. I have gone round with it and cleaned it up a bit, but it's still got a little bit of dust on it and what have you from where obviously I'm holding it down, but that just brushes off. So we've got all the main cutouts here. We've got the circuit breaker there that I've got obviously on the DC input to the charger. We've got the cutout here for the bump controller to sit through, and as it worked out, I still haven't got any photographs obviously of one fitted, but it's all in the right position, so I'm happy. We've then obviously got the extractor fan grills, if you like, cut into it from obviously to get the hot air out of the back of the PL8 Duo. The fan grill here, or the fan grill outlet, then obviously for the mean well, which is obviously then guided out through here using the 3D printed duct. And then of course then you've got the main cutouts here then obviously for the charge board. Now I can grab a charge board actually. I've got one I've started to make. Now this one obviously I've started to solder some of the components in place, because for a change I'm actually trying solder paste, which is the first time I've used it. So I've started fitting the resettable polyfuses only on this half at the moment. The other side is blank, but basically that's the PCB that Steve Smith has made for me. So obviously that's the back side. So a lot of the soldering is taking place on this side, and obviously the polyfuses are here. The XT60s will obviously poke through and come through here and obviously be soldered from this side. And of course I do also then make sure that I get solder on the other side as well if I can, just to make sure there's a good connection between the front and back copper tracks. And then of course then the front side, that is obviously what you would see if it was all open at the front. Obviously then we'd obviously have the JST XH connections and the XT60s there. So basically, as you can see here from the photographs, if I flip that back over, you would ultimately then get that obviously just sits there, and obviously it's all cut out accurately then to obviously provide the openings. And of course then we've got some recesses here. I don't know how close you can see it, I'll bring it up. We've got some recesses here then that obviously miss where I would solder, where obviously I'm going to be soldering the fuse holder here. You're obviously going to get a little bit of protrusion by the solderable pins on the other side. So on the machined part I've created obviously recesses, if you like, so that when those boards are in place they obviously sit flush to the plastic. And obviously there was obviously another reason for doing that, and that was obviously to allow the JST XH, which would obviously be seen on that side, as you can see it by the holes, to not be too far recessed into the plastic. Now obviously because I'm using 12mm thick plastic, I had to make a decision on how far I was going to allow, or be able to allow, the XH to go through, because at the same breath I also wanted to create fixing holes for self-tapping screws for the PCB, for the PCB, and I didn't really want them to go through to the front face. So obviously they're blind holes, and then obviously I'm using, I think it's number 2 size self-tapping screws by about 6mm long, I think it is, 6 or 8mm long. So obviously then they go in and obviously just hold the boards in place, which is quite nice there. Basically then from here, so what I've done already, I've started obviously with, I don't like just putting screws into plastic. You can do, and admittedly on a couple of positions on these builds I am doing so, because those screws won't necessarily need to come in and out very often, so I'm okay with doing that. But where there's a potential that screws might need to be taken in and out a couple of times for maintenance or anything else, I always go with my brass inserts here, kind of thing. So of course then I can give you an example. This isn't for a brass insert, this is for clearance, but I would obviously create a blind hole, if you like, and then obviously screw the brass insert into it. So that gives me then these ones that currently, the bigger ones here are M6, so they're a little bit more load bearing. So I've gone up to M6 size here, and then the two pairs at the top, and indeed these two here, just to hold the breaker in place at the back, and I can show you that. Basically we've got a little U-shaped bracket here which obviously clamps the breaker into place at the back. These two are M5 in the middle, and then these two at the back here then, which are for the 3D printed fan duct coming off the back to guide the air coming out the back of the fans on the back of the PL8s, or PL8 Duo should I say. They then obviously just bolt in place vertically using M5 screws, I think M5 by 10, just into the top there like that, and that creates obviously then the duct. You can see, bring it up a bit closer so you can see a little bit of the work that's gone into that. Obviously I've rebaited the grills at the back so they're not quite so deep. I think I've gone in about 5 mil, admittedly 5 or 6 mil. Here then on the left hand side and obviously on the right, although it's split between the two, and the reason for that is so my U bracket then can obviously fit in the middle of it. I've got slot locations, if you like, for the vertical plates that obviously extend, or parallel plates that come off the side of each of this to create the platform onto which the power supply fits. So hopefully if I let that go down, let me just check, see what, oh yeah, you can see perfect, brilliant. I have to remember this position. So basically if I lay that down, I'll move that PCB out the way. I've got, this is one of the side vertical plates, as I want to call it for now. Obviously it's got various holes drilled and tapped. So here, this is one example, for instance. I haven't gone with the brass inserts here, because once these screws are in place, they don't particularly need to keep coming in and out. So I've just drilled and tapped that. So M6 again here, M6 for here, and these two locations admittedly are for the 3D printed duct that I created that literally mounts, or should I say rests against the back of the Meanwell power supply, and that will go like that, and the Meanwell then will be sitting here vertically with its cooling fan end up this end, so it will literally just, the fans are pulling air in, it then gets guided in through this channel and then out through this U channel and out through the front grille. So if I go back, we've got obviously the angle brackets that I'm using, which will go like that, and these holes here which aren't threaded, they're literally to mount, to obviously act as locations, if you like, or clearance for these little mounting tangs. That would be obviously for the aluminium extrusion, so it obviously goes up and down the guide, but it also works there quite well within reason. Another little position there to hold it. So we'll have two, so we'll have one bracket like that and another bracket on the other side, and they'll of course then bolt in. So this side, and as you can see, if I come up a little bit closer, you can see I've got the little notch here, because the first one I done, I wanted to raise it by 2 millimeters, again to obviously tie in with the guide little side plates, the little side wings as we call it, that are mounted in the rack. Basically this can then sit on it and literally it slides back into position, and then the mounting holes which I've got going up the side of the front plate, they then obviously line up with the holes in the rack. So I was 2 millimeters out in my guesstimate, so I just literally added it on the bottom here, so that's why you've got a little tang there. So basically that one plugs in the side, and of course then can't flop over, because it's obviously if I bring it up, show you a little bit closer, it then obviously locks into place. So that holds that one in place, and then of course then I will get brackets, one there, so M6, 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 likewise here, so that will also be held rigid on that side. The opposite side, originally I did mirror the cutout because they are mirrored essentially, but for this one, for the second rack, I thought I would remove it. So this is actually the one where the duct will fit to, if you like, and it'll go that way round. And again, it's sized and also got the little 2mm step again at the front. Now I didn't show it on that one, but it's exactly the same. There's a very small recess as well at the top here, and it's kind of dog bone shaped, for want of a better word. It's only a 1mm deep, this one, and that'll become apparent what that one's for in a second. So again, that one then just literally slots into place like that, and obviously a little bit of movement there at the moment, but not much. And then we would have obviously a 90-degree bracket as the only thing. I need to get them just at the right height so it then obviously just falls into place. Got another bracket here, there we go. So that one then obviously that way round, that then bolts to that panel there, and the mean well then basically sits here. At the moment it's obviously, it looks like it's dangling in free air, but it's not. So the mean well obviously then it starts here. The grill on the front of it is here from memory, so the fans at the back, so literally the fans are obviously an extraction kind of method, so they'll draw air in from the front, which is obviously cooled ambient air, through the power supply, out through the duct, and then of course then out through the front, which I explained before. If I then grab one of the other plates, blow the bits off it, this is the mean well mounting plate. So basically what we've got there is I've got M5 holes on this one, and I've got, instead of using the really big 58 by 58mm angle brackets, I've got some small 20mm by 20mm brackets. So there isn't much in the way of there. If you like, there is a lot of weight on it, but there isn't a lot of load, if you like. So there's not a lot of load bearing. So by recessing the side panels by 1mm, this plate then goes in obviously 1mm, and of course that acts as the securing, if you like, for this mega plate. And then 2 on each side, so 4 in total, 4 20 by 20mm corner L-shaped brackets in aluminium. Then they're the ones that obviously then create the box framework and obviously then stop this plate then moving around. So I don't know whether it'll stay, but the idea of this plate is then it will slot into place, and if I can get it here, there you go, and hold itself in place. So that's obviously without any bolts in. It is kind of holding itself together in like a jigsaw kind of format, which is good. The power supply then would be mounted on the back side of this, and we've got 3 mounting holes for it, and they're only smaller in 3 bolts, so 2 here, 1 here. Wasn't too convinced about that in view of the fact that this modules are going to be bashed and banged around a little bit in transit to and from sites and stuff. So to be on the safe side, you'll notice then obviously I've machined 4 slots, and the idea of that is then I then run a loop of Velcro strap through through the slot, around, back up through the slot, around the mean well power supply that's on the back side of this plate, and of course then that just acts as another mechanical fixing then to, and obviously I pull it as tight as possible, so that provides a more of a mechanical position fixing for the mean well power supply on the other side, which is obviously then backed up by the 3mm bolts, which obviously then stop it moving around. So that's good. The hole here, that is basically 4, and I think I can grab one. So I've literally created boxes of the individual parts. I'm still waiting for some more parts to come, admittedly, but excuse me. This is where the one connection point is then for this module, because everything else is, with regards to the charging, is self-contained on this. So when it comes to not only fitting but removing this from the cabinet, from the main cabinet, it's just the one C20 power cable. So that then also just slots in there, and also that proves it's cut right because it's slotted in nicely. So with that in, obviously then I've got a short AC power run or AC wire run from there to the AC terminals on the front of the mean well, which are again up this end. So to fit it in the rack, basically then you've just got one C20 power lead going in, and I leave the wire a little bit longer than needed, so that then myself and the client and then obviously it comes out, loops over, and then I loop it underneath the first Velcro strap. So that acts as a kind of like a, not only a cable management, but again stops the C20 plug with a relatively heavy AC cable then whipping about within the case, and then potentially starting to wiggle it out and disconnecting it on site, which is not what you want. So that's perfect. So AC in, and that's the only connection that needs to be made then to this charger module for it to be used. That's about it realistically with this. Obviously a lot of it is the first rack was the more time consuming one, if you like, because I had to design all this, touch wood, I've got a big bit there in my head. The design was pretty much spot on first time. I was really quite pleased. The only changes I did have to make, admittedly, were the first iteration of this duct. I'd made it 1mm too tall on this face, so that when the charger was in place, it wouldn't go back far enough against the back of the charger to allow the bolts to be put in. And it was only a millimetre. It was only when I put the charger in place with its own fixing bracket, which admittedly I haven't printed, well, sorry, not printed, which admittedly I haven't machined yet, so I can't show you one of those. Actually I can, but it's mounted on the CNC, so I'm not going to get that yet. That'll be another video. So I had to shorten that, and the only other change I made then was obviously then to these faces, which are the guiding faces, to obviously guide it in and out of the flight case when it's obviously all assembled up. So I just needed to drop them by 2mm, just to, I didn't have to be honest with you. The 2mm was neither here nor there, but I just wanted the little guiding wings that are mounted in the rack to obviously sit against that as much as possible, kind of thing, and guide it. So it just makes it easier for not only myself but also the client when there is the weight of the charger and the weight of the power supply then mounted here, because then each one of these modules was coming out at least 5.4 kilograms. Actually, tell a lie, that was 5.4 kilograms without the charger. So it's give or take 5.5 kilograms plus the weight of a Revo Electrics PL8 V2 Touch. And you're potentially looking, what, probably about 6 kilograms or more on that, 6.5 even. So it's quite a substantial weight. Otherwise, yeah, as you can see, I have quite a few of these components already done. I'm literally just starting to assemble them. In fact, actually, that was one of the things I was going to show going back. Let me just wiggle this out and push that out, put that back into there. Going back to the brass insert thing, so you can see I've come up with a little neat way of doing it. Normally obviously you need a screw to put it in, but then I found out in the past the screw head would wedge up against the brass insert, so you'd screw it in, and then when you came to unscrew it again, it would take the brass insert with it, because obviously the metal to metal was obviously a better grip than the plastic was at the time. So I figured out a little washer, and with the 5mm version I actually took one of my spare RC helicopter thrust races, or the inner part of the thrust race, which is obviously taking a bit of a beating in this position, but it works, so that with my screwdriver then, and that's why I left this one out, I can then obviously then just screw it into position. So screw that down. The washer then is flat, so that obviously then it can't go in any further, which is good, so you're not risking stripping the plastic. And then I find just giving it a quick click, quick backwards like that, that then obviously allows me to remove the screw. I'll hold the washer, and then the brass insert is in place. Then obviously then to avoid losing my washers and everything else, I just put another one on, and then that one's ready to go then for the next one. And I've got another 2 of these plates to put all the inserts in and what have you. So I'll put that back in my spare bits there. As you can see, I've actually got them here. So that's number 2, and then number 3 is the same. I'm not going to show you that, there's no point. So yeah, I haven't really got anything else to show you on this particular build. Obviously that's the breaker. The only thing I haven't printed yet, I do have another 3D printed little guide for this, and there was a reason why I did that. The corners on this part of the breaker, that obviously is the part that would obviously poke through the hole in the deck, they're 90 degree, and and the only way I can do that is to cut out that sort of dog bone shape there, which is how I've achieved a kind of like a 90-degree corner, but then it would look unsightly from the other side. So I made this hole slightly bigger by, I think, about 2 mil all round, and then with the 3D printer then I've obviously then created the square hole then that fits into, and then obviously then, because it's a little plastic adapter, and then the outside of the plastic adapter then obviously has the 2mm radius for my 4mm to account for the radius of my 4mm cutter that obviously machines the holes. So that then obviously creates the holder for that. And then if my maths is correct with that, let's get this out. It's the first time I tried this, so hopefully it works. I made a bit of a guess. So the idea was, by making this slot a bit deeper on this one, was that I could then come in. Brilliant. There we go. Obviously that'll sit, yeah, that'll sit there a little bit back from memory by a couple of millimeters, but the idea is then that can then also just, I could, on the first one I couldn't get this out without taking this side plate out, so the idea with the slot on that side is then obviously I can get my U-shaped bracket in and down, and then of course then 5mm bolts, and then that's obviously secured in place from the front. Perfect. So that's good, I'm pleased. First time I tried it on camera, so if it hadn't worked I would have had to have used a few bleeps, but anyway, it did. Yeah, everything else is pretty much self-explanatory really. Got a couple of those, because obviously the Charger has 2 fans. I've got my empty back half of the PL8 Duo Touch. I wanted the front as well. If you're listening, Revo, can I have the front, please? But anyway, I got the back bit. That was more than good enough for what I needed for this. Anyway, I'm just being pedantic. So that obviously then fits in there, like so. Give or take. I know where it goes now, roughly. So that goes like that. Sorry, back of my head. Hopefully I'm not balding. And that goes there. I then got another machined plate using the 10mm polypropylene that goes across the back here, and obviously then has mount, and obviously has holes then there that using M5 cap head screws, which just fit inside these holes quite nicely, so I don't have to do anything with the Charger. The heads of the M5 cap head bolts literally just slot in those holes, and there's a little bit of movement on it admittedly, but not enough to worry about. It just acts as a location, if you like. And then on the sides, where before I would 3D print the holding brackets for the PL8s, which works 99% of the time, that works perfectly fine, because this was going to be a little bit more of an industrial sort of setup, I needed to safeguard against potential failures, because I have had 1 or 2 plastic brackets fail where predominantly, admittedly, where the couriers have not looked after the package, and where it's got whacking great bits of tape on it that says fragile, handle with care, they don't. So anyway, so what I did, again, I used a hybrid version, so I've got 3D printed columns, standoffs, so we'll have 4, 2 on either side of the Charger if you like. And what I've done as well, on one side I've got 2 smaller mounting holes there if you like, so and they're replicated in the plastic plate, so these will bolt into each corner of the 10mm polypropylene machined plate, and then secured to it with 2 self-tapping screws, so when you're removing it, these 4 posts stay on each of the corners. They're not flopping about, you're not having to worry about aligning them or anything. They're already pre-aligned for you off the Charger plate, which is handy. And then the hole then down the middle is just a 6.2mm diameter, which is clearance on M6, and I'm literally just using an M6 by, I think it's 75mm bolt. So basically then with the 10mm piece of polypropylene across the back here as well, we've got 10mm, then the width, the height of those, which I can't remember off the top of my head. So the M6 bolts just go all the way through and lock into the previously installed brass inserts. Don't know if you can see it from that angle, but yeah, should be another 2 of those. Yep, another one there, and there's the other one, and get them up the right way, not that it matters, but for purposes of the video. So there you go, you got the 4 standoffs. The M6 bolts just bolt through it. Take that out. Yeah, got the little 20 by 20, I think they're 20 by 20 or 18 by 18. Again, can't remember, and I got the right one. So they'll just mount there with a single M5 bolt, and then obviously another M5 bolt then into the bottom of the plate here. And of course then, as you can see, it's got the little clearance holes there then, so the little tangs match into it, and that's perfect. What else have I got? I don't think there's really anything else to show you there really. So I got some C20 power leads. This is for the cooling fans. Admittedly, I snipped the 2-pin shaver plug style off the end, and basically on the, I'll get that one. This is then the junction box, as I want to call it, if you like, for the cooling fans. And I didn't show that on the other video from memory, but you might have seen them in the pictures. Basically, the cooling fans I got for this are mains voltage ones, so I wanted to create something that would take the wires in and then hide the AC terminals from fingers. So I created like a simple 3D printed box which then bolts on the back panel, and then also then provides, I solder the wires directly in from the fans, and obviously I've put holes on either side so the fan wires then just poke through and come in the middle. I solder it then to this, I can't remember what they call that, C8 I think it is or something, AC connector, because there's no earth on it. So you just got live and neutral. That's then bolted on the back of the panel, and then the power lead, which if I can open it for the leads, again this all comes down to the fact of keeping every module within reason of this case as a separate modular unit that you can just plug in and out. So basically then the fans then just, that is again wired in the consumer unit, and there's another loose wire, and obviously then that just wiggles in and provides power, AC power to the two fans. And then if the fans need any maintenance work, just wiggle it, pull it out. Nice and simple. Keeps it nice and safe as well when it comes to electric, especially 240 volts or 110 volts. You don't mess around. Balance leads. These aren't quite the right ones from memory, but I wanted short ones already with a pre-crimped on end, so I bought a load of these, and I've got some from a UK supplier. Admittedly, I've ordered the next lot from China, which are on the way. Basically then with a board in place, and there'll be another one of those here. So we've got obviously the balance ports there, so one there to the front of the charger, so channel, I think that's channel 1. Obviously then another one then on the other side to channel 2, so that's the balance connection from the charger to the first board. And then obviously then you can see there's a pair of line of through holes there, so then I'll have another one of these leads from there to the board below. So basically this 4 and this 4 are wired in parallel to channel 1, and then this 4 and this 4 are wired in parallel to channel 2. And likewise then with the XT90s, the XT90, assuming it goes in the hole, yep, so we'll have XT90, XT90. So this one feeds this bank of 4, this one feeds this bank of 4. Then of course then in my wiring then I create a parallel harness again essentially. So from the charger comes into this XT90, and then from this XT90 then it piggybacks over then to the XT90 on the second board down here. So again it's just in parallel, and the boards, even though it looks like it may be joined, it's not. So this is an independent half, and this is an independent half as well. So the idea of the charger is this side then charges 4, 4, 8, and this side of the charger charges 8 LiPo positions again. And this is again why I call it the pigeonhole, because the batteries then just poke through from the front side into each one of these holes, and obviously then the connections then are looped up and round back on themselves to connect to the JST XHs on the back end of this. I think that's about it really. That kind of covers this. This just arrived the other day admittedly, so that's the that's the 32 amp industrial socket that is on the back of the unit, and obviously then I've mounted that behind the consumer unit with a hole, so the wires just literally, actually they don't come out through here, they come out through the hole under here, which I have to break out. So the AC wires just, again, they're all self-contained, so it just goes, I drill a hole through the consumer unit, into the matches up with this. The wires then come through from here, from the terminals in here, out and into the back of each one of the 16 amp AC breakers. So it's perfect. obviously it's quite a chunky connector. We're allowing at least 10 amps per Meanwell RSP 1600 48 volt power supply, so you needed at least 30 amps, so 32 amps is perfect, so that's brilliant. And it's a nice big chunky plug as well, you're not likely to break that kind of thing. Admittedly, the first time I got this, no matter what my electrician said, I still made a bit of a booger and brought the wrong gender to start with, but anyway I sent it back and got the right one. It was just an oversight on my part, should I say, but we know which one to go with now, and we've got it, so that's brilliant. So yeah, so as you can see, this is basically how it all assembles, and this is how I'm going to now start to assemble it. Sorry if you hear my Dyson blade fan going in the background. In the UK it's cold and wet today, and my workshop isn't double walled, unfortunately, in every place, so it does get a bit cold, so I've got the fan going. But thank you for watching. Sorry for waffling on, but hopefully this gives you a little bit more of an insight as to what each module, or how each module is assembled. Once one is, I'll probably come back and do another one to show you obviously it all assembled. But in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and come and see me again. See you soon. Bye bye.